Delta is the best company in the battalion.
Major Smith and stuff as they say.
I should be in command of other professionals.
I see you brought your tortoise, Murray.
He's my mate. Yet I find myself here, breastfeeding a bunch of kids.
All units, prepare for enemy attack. Artillery have driven the enemy back. Fire! And now we're going after him. At Long Tan.
Just your typical shoot and scoot. We're not going to find anything.
With any luck, Lieutenant.
Hello and welcome to the Matt's Movie Reviews podcast. I'm your host Matthew Pejkovic and this is episode number 238. Out now in Australian cinemas is Danger Close, the Battle of Long Tan, the true story of an intense battle during the Vietnam War in which 108 Australian soldiers took on 2,500 North Vietnamese and Viet Cong soldiers and held their ground, with 18 Anzacs giving their life in service to their country. A thrilling and heartbreaking depiction of a heroic battle within an unpopular war, Danger Close is also a brilliant technical achievement that places its audience in the thick of an intense firefight. Joining me now is the director of Danger Close, the Battle of Long Tan, Mr. Kriv Stenders. Kriv, I thank you very much for talking to me today.
Cheers, Matt. No worries.
So, the Battle of Long Tan, now, this was known by many military academics and enthusiasts, but for the general public, especially in Australia, it didn't have that same kind of recognition of, say, Gallipoli or Kokoda. I'm just really curious, when was the first time did you know about the Battle of Long Tan?
I was vaguely aware of it before I got the script. I got the script in 2011, and I think I was only aware of it because maybe I'd read a Good Weekend article, like in the Saturday papers about it. It was coming up to some anniversary, I think, and I'd read about it vaguely then. But it wasn't until I read the script and then saw the documentary that Martin Walsh, the lead producer, had made, that I suddenly understood the full scope and breadth of the story and realised what an astounding and incredible story it was. Martin
Walsh really is a proponent for this story to be out there. And like you said, he does have his own documentary, which I think is out on YouTube now for a lot of people to see. When you first met him, does his enthusiasm for this time, for the soldiers who served during this battle, really kind of win you over to want to make this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I could see his passion for it. I could see this was something that he had a singular belief in, a pretty driven belief in making. And I really responded to the script because what I liked about the script was that even in that early version, it really just concentrated on the battle. And that really won me over because I thought, so many films have been made about the Vietnam War and the Vietnam War experience. And what I liked about the script was that it really just concentrated on the battle, and it could have been any battle in any war.
Yeah.
But it was because it was through the prism of these Australian soldiers, these young conscripts. It worked in its own world. It worked in its own within its own realm. So that along with Martin's, I guess, determination to get the story told was really what won me over and made me commit.
It's a really interesting point that you brought up because I was just about to say that Vietnam War movies usually have more to do with the politics of the time than, say, what was happening in the field. And what your film did so well is that it looked at the soldiers themselves, not about why they were there, but what they were doing when they were there, which I think was just an incredible thing to do. I mean, was there any type of suggestion whatsoever to kind of edge in some type of political kind of talk? Because there was also afterwards a very shameful period there where the Australian government itself failed to recognise the contributions that these soldiers made.
Yeah, well, one of the earlier drafts, the original draft I read was bookended by, Harry Smith at Canberra trying to kind of fight for, the recognition of the men. But we realised, look, that was just getting in the way of a much leaner, much more muscular, much purer story.
Yep.
And I'm a big fan, of one of my favourite films is a film by Paul Greengrass called United 93. I think it's one of the most extraordinary films made in the last 20 years. And I love the fact that film just dealt with the day, dealt with the characters, dealt with the dynamics, dealt with the actual minutiae of that day. And everyone else knows the context of the Vietnam War I felt that this idea of the fact that these men hadn't been recognised was much better done as a postscript. It would be more poignant. So we made a lot of decisions just to really strip it back and to make something that was very, very crystal and very, very streamlined, and allowed then people to bring their own context to it.
You mentioned the name Major Harry Smith. He's portrayed by Travis Fimmel in Danger Close. It's really interesting, Travis's career, considering he's a huge star, but he's hardly worked in Australia. I think Danger Close is his second movie that he's done here. What was it like to work with him in this role, and what do you think it was like for him to return to Australia and work in a movie that had such a responsibility attached to it?
Well, firstly, working with Travis was an absolute pleasure. I mean, he's a very instinctive actor. Acting isn't, he's not a trained actor, so there is a sort of a fantastic raw energy that he brings. But he's also super intelligent. He's very, very thoughtful, and he knows a lot about story, and he knows a lot about character. And a lot of his ideas we incorporated into the script. So I think it was just one of those projects that we managed to kind of sell him on purely because of the fact that he could make the character his own character. Like the character of Harry Smith on the page was kind of neutral, and Travis saw an opportunity to kind of imbue Harry Smith with his own version of Harry, which is someone who's torn and struggling with the responsibility of being the commander of these men and sending these boys off to be killed, but at the same time frustrated by that. And that struggle, that conflict, that inner conflict was something that Travis really tapped into, and I think is, it's very evident there on the big screen.
When I read read stories about movies based on wars or war movies, I always read about these pre-production kind of rituals, maybe boot camp and such. Did you put your actors through the same kind of thing to kind of build a camaraderie and have some type of kind of grounded experience before shooting began?
Yeah, we kind of did our version of it, which was a cheap version because we didn't have much pre-pro time. We cast the film very, very quickly, very late. So a lot of the boys kind of came together in the last couple of weeks before the shoot. But they basically did a boot camp of about 2 days with our military advisors and our stunt people. And in a way, the intensity of that 2 days was just as good as doing it over a month or a week, because the pressure was there to learn this and to, like within a week you're going to be out there holding guns, lying on your guts and trying to make it look real. So that was a fantastic bonding experience for them, but also it kind of galvanised everyone and focused them that there's nothing like fear to kind of motivate people. So in a funny kind of way, the short time period really helped us.
You spoke before about wanted an audience to kind of experience what the soldiers were going through on the field, and a lot of that has based around this really intense firefight. I mean, you really kind of feel like you're really a part of what's on the screen. The size and scope of this is just massive. And I think when you look back at your filmography, something new to you as well. How did you want to approach your action scenes? For example, how much do we see on screen is, say, practical effects as opposed to post-production visual stuff?
Well, I guess firstly, I think that's a two-part question. So the first part is really how we approached it was, I had a very great script by Stuart Beattie. He wrote in a very lean style, a very minimalist style that was really easy for me to translate to the screen. So everything that you see on the screen is on the page. So it was very easy to compartmentalise. So we just broke it down into parts, into bits and pieces, because if you start to think about the whole, you just kind of shit yourself.
Yeah.
So I just had to kind of break it up into small chunks. And, one of the things, what I liked about the script was that every gun that was fired, every artillery round that was fired had a consequence. So unlike other war movies where the sort of geography is kind of chaotic and the shooting is just sort of like has no motivation, every firefight, every time there was a charge, every time these men had to fight back, that's actually what happened. So I liked the precision of that. So that was sort of that was kind of interesting to sort of, as I said, compartmentalise and break down and shoot, and to also be very conscious of geography and trying to make the audience understand where all these platoons were and what was happening. And then in terms of the practical effects, virtually everything, all the gun effects, all the squibs, all the bullet hits, all the muzzle flashes are all done in CG. We basically had dry props like rubber guns. The actors just mined, the recoil, and everything else was put in post.
Yep.
Because if we had to do it with real blanks, we'd still be there shooting the film.
Yep.
And we wouldn't be able to have got the angles that we got. We were able to bring the cameras right up along the side of the guns, right up into the soldiers' faces. Something you just can't do with a camera with a live round. So that kind of gave us the freedom, it sort of unshackled us. It gave us the sort of liberty to put the camera wherever we wanted, and knowing that we could rely on the CG team to put everything else in later just gave us incredible flexibility, and we were able to shoot quickly as well.
Final question, Kriv. I was at the Sydney Film Festival screening, the first screening, which I think was outside of maybe a cast and crew screen, was kind of like the first time the public got a chance to watch this film. And in that audience, there were cast, crew, there were veterans from that war and other wars, and relatives of people who served and died at Long Tan. This movie was a real process, like 9 years to get on screen. Once you are there and you spoke beforehand to the audience, and people watch the film and they stand up and they cheer at the end of it, in the scope of your career, is it fair to say that right there was perhaps the most satisfying moment in your career so far?
Yeah, one of them. I mean, look, the thing is that it's all relative. You have these adventures, you go on these journeys and make these films, and they're all difficult. No film is easy, and every film that you make is, it's very satisfying when you do finally make it and screen it to an audience. But this film, I think it's more, maybe not so much that night, but it's been, since the weeks since the film's been released and months since it's been out there, the responses and reactions I've been getting are just, it's kind of like unlike anything I've experienced before. It really feels like we've told a very significant Australian story that's connecting and resonating with people of all generations, and I think for the veteran community especially, it's been quite extraordinary. Like, a lot of people, the social media has been amazing. A lot of people are reconnecting, finding each other, talking about the battle, talking about their relatives, talking about themselves. We've got soldiers who are in the battle, communicating directly with people, younger people. It's quite an amazing thing to sort of watch unfold. Like, you trigger this thing, and then you realise, like, the resonances of this are really quite wide and profound. So that is sort of, for me, the most satisfying thing is knowing we've made a film, hopefully that will last, that will become a classic, and that will, speak to generations from now on. So that makes me very proud and enormously, gratified.
So for everyone out there listening, Danger Close, The Battle of Long Tan, out now in Australian cinemas. Get out there and watch it. It's an important film, and it's a damn fine film as well. And Kriv Stenders, congratulations to you on the making of your movie. And once again, I thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thanks, Matt, and thanks so much for the support. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.